Welcome back, fans and friends, for this upcoming video. It's sort of a different direction, although it technically is a blanket for everything I do here on the channel, except for occasionally Fallout 76 videos. And that is going the direction of Star Wars. So I have done a couple of Star Wars projects slash items in the past. This one will also be Star Wars, so if you're interested in Star Wars, that's too bad. But this one here is actually, I'm a fan of the starship design usually. And so for this video, I will have the Fiend fighter as decked out for one of the characters in the Ahsoka TV show. As you can see up there, release wave 7. And this is the Fiend fighter, so also known as the RP82, a different version which is used by the standard pilots as opposed to Marok and Shinhadi's fighter version of it. Hers is painted in the red, and Marok's actually is just a variant of this. They just changed this and they color it differently. I think it's just all gold. And so this is a point defense fighter used by Morgan Elsbeth's forces to defend the giant hyperdrive space ring that they built towards the end, I believe, of the first season. Anyway, this is number 0145 of the entire line from Jazwares. We have their Micro Galaxy Squadron, and we have their Shinhadi and how she will be getting into this fighter. So once I dismantle this packaging, obviously it's going to be garbage / recycling, and so I do actually want to just use it for display. And so here we have the rest of the line. I do believe this one actually is from an earlier line, but I know this one is new. You have Chopper and I believe Kane and Jarrus. Obviously, I believe that's the Marok version. You can just see him there, and the fighter is actually less painted. You have the white laser cannons and the foils and most of the wings. They have a very worn look to them. Like if you're thinking about the original Star Wars movies, they have the sort of a used feel to it. Han Solo's fighter, obviously, Bespin, and most of that other stuff. It has a universe that actually feels lived in. And then here, I believe, is the Gauntlet Night Brother variant of Bo-Katan's Gauntlet transport. So this is the transport, not the Fang fighter. Just so you're aware, there are minor differences. One is somewhat bigger and carries actually passengers. The other is just a single seat. Short range, not really short range. It does have, I believe, a hyperdrive, but it's not you can just go anywhere you want kind of hyperdrive. Anyway, here we have an Arabesh, the two length and description of the fighter. Yeah, once again, you have everything there. Unfortunately, I don't know enough to single it out. Translations are readily available everywhere else. There you have again, fighter with the cockpit open, and the entire fighter facing the other direction, cockpit open. As you can see, it's a very large package. It is much larger actually than, I also have Asajj Ventress's fighter over here. I'll be doing that video eventually. Anyway, Jazwares is not usually a company we would associate with Star Wars, but lately they have actually been taking over a lot more of the starship responsibility, stuff like that from Disney. So one of the things I did like about, I grew up in the era of the prequels, so I did enjoy the change from Republic, let's say, to Empire. The whole universe is functioning, things have a history and definite change to them. So unfortunately, this would be sort of like an outer rim fighter. We don't see it anywhere else. And even when we move to, let's just say, Skeleton Crew, the pirates to use a slightly different version of the fighter. It is a very light fighter, so why I say point defense is this is the only weapons it has. You can't really use it to attack large starships. It's probably less useful than a TIE fighter because it's not as simple, but it is tiny actually. So if you see how big the person is, and you see how big the fighter is, it is actually increasingly small. So rather than rely on shields and armor, it relies on its speed and small size to avoid getting destroyed. Unfortunately, that doesn't work if you face trained crews with better equipment than you. Anyway, so we do see here, like I said, the paint is coming off of it, has sort of a used feel to it. She is, I believe she serves even as Marok's superior in the show, so therefore she would be relying more on the Force rather than technology to get the job done. Meanwhile, the skills of either, I am unaware of how much better they are in their fighters. Marok eventually gets killed on the ground. Shinhati goes into hiding on the planet they are in. And so, it unfortunately is not easy to get out. but so I eventually managed to get it free. And as you can see there's the instructions for getting the character into the craft. And as you can see, I left the tie-in right there because it was insanely difficult to cut. The character comes in their own little sleeve. You could just see there the flap, and then literally just supposed to pop right out. Unfortunately, I love to make things more difficult than they actually are. And there she is. There is a second plastic covering, which is, I don't know if it's overkill, but definitely if you don't want to get destroyed. So one thing I will say, I should actually compare this to something else. Hold on. And so what I just wanted to do is, you can see her figure here. And this is a green light figure. So we know green lights are theoretically 1/64. And they are almost the same size. So that, therefore, technically, I'm doing Disney and Jazwares a favor here. And your fighters are essentially 1/64. And I just chose a race car driver because it makes it seem more authentic towards the vehicle / putting a pilot in it, as opposed to putting just some random person. So I will start with the base. You have here, this is the triangular base. You have here Star Wars written on the side. You have sort of a technology circuitry feel to it. Sorry, look to it. Everything is etched on. So you can just see there, I'm scratching everything else. This is the base. There will be a socket in the bottom of the fighter. I don't believe there is landing gear on the fighter. So I also have actually the TIE Hunter from Moff Gideon as well. I don't know if I'll do that, but we'll see. So what shall we start with? The nose. So my first impressions of this fighter is, for those of you familiar with World War II, it has a very Polycarpov I-16 feel to it. Similar to the I-15, but this is not a biplane. And so what you have, the word you would have had, I do have an I-16, however, I don't have it near me and I don't want to open it. But also the F2 on Buffalo. So you have a very round nose, you have a large radial where the engine would be. Obviously, this is not a piston engine aircraft. You have control vanes similar to Anakin Skywalker's pod racer. We will see shortly how much I'll be breaking this model between what moves and what doesn't move. So far, the only thing I know that opens is the cockpit, which we will get to eventually. Nice and clear, easy to see in the cabin. You have there the reticle for aiming, and you can see here evidence of worn paint. She has the red, like I said, Marok has the white for squadron leaders. You have the two laser cannons, either twin or dual, depending on your terminology. Exposed circuitry, which is great for damaging the craft in the atmosphere or space. But otherwise, we have very little else, or lots of stuff actually. Like I said, we have here on to the right side, you have control vanes, once again, worn out paint. I don't want to break it by moving things that are not supposed to move. But it's my thing, I can do whatever I want. Don't believe anything on the edge of the wing moves. So we have there, like I said, it has that very radial feel to it. Another fighter that this looks actually very similar to is the Fiat G50. The only difference is this craft does not have a tail. General Grievous's fighter, also the rear end of it bears some similarities to this. However, it does not have the rear fin like his fighter, and it obviously does not have the two front planes. They are much shortened, and the obviously reversed delta wing of the craft. So, more circuitry, or technology, let's just say. Onto the back, you have the exhaust. Like I said, it's an ion engine or some sort of a turbine, ion turbine. Star Wars, I can just make it up. Onto the left side, we have here more circuitry and machinery, and otherwise, I believe there are control vanes. Right there. You have steering, and once again, the vanes, I guess for adjusting pitch and yaw. And like I said, I don't know how difficult this would be to fly because obviously it doesn't really exist. So as you can see there, we do have rondelles and sockets and joints, but so far this thing does not move. You see there is some flex to it, but I don't want to break it. And honestly, on the back of the fighter, unlike Ventressa's fighter, we don't have any evidence of it moving because hers, the fan blade, it will go from recessed position to an open position, providing superior power, but more energy signature, so you can finally hit her. And like this thing, she would rely also on her force abilities to pilot rather than true absolute skill. So unfortunately, as you can see there, I can see a line joint. I don't believe it's supposed to flex or move it anyway, so that's just the way it was made. Anyway, finally, onto the underside. Plain in terms of everything else. Once again, you have a lot of worn paint, giving it that used feel to it. Probably very low-cost fighters. And so here we have, I want to say, front wing radiators. Would have been seen in certain World War II fighters, especially the Spitfire and early Hurricanes. So that they wouldn't have to have a huge vent on the front of the fighter. Think of different engined aircraft like the Hawk or Typhoon, eventual versions of the Spitfire with the Griffin engine and so on and so forth. P-51 would have had it moved back a little. And so the thing I missed is you can see there a screw for taking the top from the bottom, but also this is the socket that will go in here. So as you can see, it is relatively simple. There is no clicking, so just be aware of that. You will literally have to balance the craft yourself. And unfortunately, we have it there. Actually, that's not too bad. Yeah, it's going to fall over. So unfortunately, it is not. You have to press in a little bit more, and then it does this. So if you're okay with that, that's fine. Happens to get over very quickly. And so for the most part, I have covered this as best as I can. Like I said, there's not too much information. This is not the Days of Star Wars Legends where you can say it's so long and this and that. 2 laser cannon shields and that, this and that. We never get any indication this thing has shields. Into the cockpit, there are the control surfaces in the front, similar to the actual Naboo fighter. But you can just see the back of the laser cannons are right outside the front of the cockpit. So if you have a misfire or something bursts, I can only imagine. Anyway, so now we have Shin herself, the mini version. If you can't find the Black Series, I guess this will have to do. Obviously, she's, I believe, more or less accurate to her height. I believe that the red version of the Stig over there should be roughly 6 feet tall. But her arms don't want to move much higher than this. I don't see, it just flexes back. Relatively easy to move them down, but doesn't want to move up. And so here we have her in her sitting position, and she will go into the fighter just like that. Luckily, there is some flex. And click, there she is, sitting down. Unfortunately, I'm not going to move her arms back up so she can look like she's piloting with her hands because it was just awkward and I don't want to break her arms off. And then all you have to do to make this space worthy is throw it into space. Not from where I am, but some sort of a rocket, and then there you have it. So as you can see, there's a bit of a gap between the main windscreen, the body, obviously not in the show, but to facilitate the joint of it opening to clear everything else here. So fans and friends, thanks for sitting through this. This is my first starfighter from Star Wars. Obviously not my first Star Wars craft. That would be the Landspeeder, Luke's, from the basic Hot Wheels version. And so far, like I said, there's no moving. There's flex. That's not good because it means I've broken it. But there is no other moving parts besides the windscreen. And then you simply add with a click, make sure it's clicks, otherwise it will not stay. The landing gear, like I said, there are some similarities between this craft, the I-16. People will say the P-47, but the P-47 has a different, more bubble canopy and curved forward like this layout. So like I said, probably the G50, at least the front half of the aircraft, the G50 from Fiat, and the Polikarpov I-16. Point defense fighters. This one is not very heavily armed, but I believe by 1936-39, the Polikarpov would have been very heavily armed with 4 machine guns. This thing is not. It is 2 laser cannons and off you go. Probably meant to be very cheap, expendable, but low cost and easy to fly and easy to maintain. As you can see, they clearly don't care about the appearance. Although, to be fair, I don't know if these are simply from stock. She has to fly them. That's all they have. And they don't want to use Imperial technology because that's a pretty easy way to get caught. So they avoid that. Instead, they go with this here. So, like I said, it's fun to see things that are not from the trilogies And the main line, other mostly outer rim stuff, as you can imagine. It does look really nice. I will probably pick up Merrick's if I see his. And I am going to see if I'm going to pick up some of the other stuff from the line. I do want the Tide Whisper. I have a different version of it. And the Armada one actually is the same price. So technically from Jazwares, you're getting a much better product. And it is less expensive. It's also much bigger. Like I said, it's probably roughly a 1/64 scale. Because this guy from Green Light theoretically fits in the Green Light vehicle. He is about the same size as she is. I'm not going to break his legs or anything to fit him in there, but you get what I'm saying. Anyway, fans and friends, my first Starfighter review from Star Wars Jazwares, the RP82, also called the Fiend Fighter according to the packaging. The version Shin flies against Ahsoka when they try to catch up to her in her transport. Obviously not a hyperdrive capable craft. Like I said, point defense, local area, planetary probably. Planetary Defense Force, very light fighter. Point defense interceptor. So, it's Thomas from Toronto. Thanks for watching, and to the next one.